The ship landed on Dorani Prime just as the twin suns began to set. Kong Tae-ho stood near the window and watched the golden light spread across the alien city below. The buildings were tall and beautiful, made of white stone that seemed to glow in the fading light. Everything here spoke of old money and older pride. "Are you ready?" asked Yoon Soo-jin, his colleague and friend. She stood beside him, adjusting her formal uniform. Tae-ho nodded slowly. "As ready as anyone can be for this." They both knew what waited for them below. The Dorani Empire was one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. They had built starships when humans were still living in caves. They had conquered worlds, created art, and written poetry, while Earth was covered in ice. To the Dorani, humans were children. Worse than children. They were insects who had somehow learned to walk among giants. But humans had something the Dorani needed. The trade routes near Earth's sector were valuable, and humanity controlled them completely. So the Dorani had agreed to this meeting. They did not want friendship. They wanted business. And they wanted to remind the humans, at every moment, exactly where they stood in the galactic order. The delegation walked down the landing ramp and into the grand hall of Dorani Prime. Tae-ho had seen pictures of this place, but nothing had prepared him for its size. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Thousands of Dorani stood in perfect rows, their silver skin shining under floating lights. They were tall and thin, with large dark eyes that showed no warmth. At the far end of the hall sat the Emperor on his throne of crystal. He was ancient, his face lined with centuries of rule. Beside him stood his advisors, generals, and family members. And among them, Tae-ho noticed a young female Dorani watching the humans with open disgust on her face. She was beautiful in the way that a knife is beautiful, sharp and cold and dangerous. Her silver skin was paler than the others, marking her royal blood. Her eyes, darker than space itself, followed the human delegation with something like hunger. Not the hunger of desire, but the hunger of a predator watching weak prey. This was Princess Valina, the Emperor's youngest daughter. Tae-ho had read about her in the briefing files. She was spoiled, cruel, and had never heard the word no in her entire life. She collected insults the way other royals collected jewels. She enjoyed breaking people, especially those she considered beneath her, which meant she would enjoy the humans very much. The welcome ceremony began with formal speeches. The Emperor spoke of cooperation and mutual benefit, but his words were empty. Everyone in the room knew the truth. This was not a meeting of equals. This was a powerful empire allowing weak newcomers to beg for scraps at their table. When it was time for introductions, the human delegation stepped forward one by one. Each human bowed respectfully to the Emperor. Each bow was met with cold silence from the Dorani crowd. Then it was Tae-ho's turn. He walked forward with calm steps. He was not a tall man, and he was not young anymore. His black hair had touches of gray at the temples. His face was plain and honest. There was nothing special about him to look at. But there was something in the way he moved, something steady and unshakable, that made people pay attention. He bowed to the Emperor with perfect form. "Kang Tae-ho," he said clearly, "cultural ambassador of Earth. I bring greetings from my people and hope for friendship between our worlds." Before the Emperor could respond, a sharp laugh cut through the silence. It came from Princess Valina. "Friendship?" she said, not bothering to hide her amusement. "You speak of friendship as if you have something to offer us." The hall went very quiet. Even the Emperor's advisors looked uncomfortable, but Valina did not care. She stepped forward, her eyes locked on Tae-ho. "Look at you," she continued. "So small, so fragile. Your species lives what, 80 years? 100 if you are lucky? I have dresses older than your entire civilization." Some of the young Dorani nobles laughed at this. Valina smiled, encouraged by her audience. "And yet you come here speaking of friendship, of equality." She shook her head slowly. "Do you teach your insects to shake hands, human? Do you invite bacteria to dinner?" Teho stood perfectly still through all of this. His face showed nothing, not anger, not shame, not fear. He simply watched her the way one might watch a storm pass by. This seemed to annoy Valina. She had expected a reaction, tears perhaps, or stuttering attempts at defense. Instead, she got nothing. "Well," she demanded, "have you nothing to say?" Teho met her eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he bowed again, just as respectfully as before. "I am honored to meet you, Princess Valina," he said quietly. "I hope your evening is pleasant." Then he stepped back into line with the other humans and said nothing more. Valina stood there, her mouth slightly open. This was not how it was supposed to go. She had thrown her best insults at him, and he had simply ignored them. Not fought back, not crumbled, just treated her words like wind and let them pass. The Emperor cleared his throat and continued the ceremony. But Valina barely heard him. She was staring at the human called Taiho with new interest in her dark eyes. He was not afraid of her. That was strange enough. But more than that, he did not seem to hate her either. When their eyes had met, she had seen something unexpected in his gaze. It almost looked like sadness, like pity, as if she was the one who deserved sympathy, not him. The thought made her blood burn hot with anger. How dare he pity her? She was a princess of the greatest empire in the galaxy. He was nothing, a mayfly, a shadow that would be forgotten before she finished her first century. She decided then that she would break him. Not quickly, but slowly. She would find whatever pride he had hidden inside that calm face, and she would crush it in front of everyone. The welcome ceremony ended, and the humans were led to their quarters. As Teho walked away, he felt Valina's eyes on his back like 2 points of cold fire. "That one is going to be trouble," Sujin whispered to him. "Yes," Teho agreed softly, "but not the kind she expects." He had met people like Valina before. Bullies wore the same face in every corner of the universe. They fed on reactions, on fear and anger and shame. Take those away, and they had nothing left to eat. Tomorrow, the real negotiations would begin, and Teho knew that the hardest battles were never fought with weapons. They were fought with patience. 3 days passed on Dorani Prime, and each day was harder than the one before. The negotiations were not going well. The Dorani demanded everything and offered nothing. They wanted full access to human trade routes, but refused to share their own technology. They wanted human ships to pay heavy taxes, but expected their own vessels to travel freely. Every meeting ended with the humans frustrated and the Dorani smiling their cold smiles. But the worst part was not the unfair demands. The worst part was Princess Valina. She appeared at every meeting, every meal, every formal event. She did not participate in the negotiations. She was there only to watch the humans and to remind them, again and again, how little they mattered. She made comments about human smell, about human appearance, about the amusing way humans walked on their stubby little legs. Her young noble friends laughed at every joke. The older Dorani pretended not to hear, but they did nothing to stop her. Teho endured all of this in silence. He never responded to her insults. He never showed anger or hurt. He simply did his job and treated everyone with the same quiet respect. This made Valina furious. On the 3rd night, there was a grand banquet to celebrate the progress of negotiations. The humans knew there had been no real progress, but they attended anyway, wearing their best formal clothes and practicing their diplomatic smiles. The banquet hall was magnificent. Long tables stretched from wall to wall, covered with foods that glowed and sparkled and moved on their plates. Musicians played strange instruments that made sounds like water and wind. Hundreds of Dorani guests filled the room, their silver skin reflecting the soft lights like living mirrors. The human delegation sat at a small table near the back of the hall. This placement was deliberate, of course, another small insult to remind them of their status. Taeho sat quietly, eating little and watching the room. He noticed Princess Valina across the hall, surrounded by her circle of young nobles. She was watching him, too. When their eyes met, she smiled in a way that made his stomach tight with warning. She was planning something. The banquet continued for hours. Speeches were made. Toasts were raised. The Dorani celebrated themselves while the humans sat in polite silence. Then, as the night grew late, Valina stood up from her table. Her friends followed. They walked across the hall with slow, deliberate steps, and every eye in the room turned to watch them. They stopped at the human table. "Good evening," Valina said sweetly. "I hope you are enjoying our food. I know it must be strange for you. I understand humans usually eat, what is it called? Processed paste from tubes?" Her friends giggled. The humans at the table said nothing. Valina picked up a glass of human wine that had been brought specially for the delegation. She sniffed it and made a face of disgust. "This is what you drink for celebration?" She held it up for her friends to see. "It smells like rotting fruit. How fitting for a rotting species." She poured the wine slowly onto the floor at Taeho's feet. Still, no one at the human table spoke. Sujin's hands were clenched tight under the table, but her face remained calm. The other diplomats looked at their plates. Valina leaned closer to Taeho. She was not finished. "Tell me, human," she said loudly, making sure the entire hall could hear. "What is it like to know that your entire species is nothing? That everything you have ever built, everything you have ever dreamed, means less to us than the dirt under our feet?" Taeho looked up at her. His eyes were calm and clear. "What is it like?" Valina continued, her voice rising. "To come crawling to our door, begging for scraps, knowing that we let you live only because you are sometimes useful? You are not guests here. You are servants. You are a species of servants pretending to be people." The hall was completely silent now. Every Dorani was watching. Even the musicians had stopped playing. Valina smiled, sure of her victory. "So tell me, servant, do you have anything to say? Or will you just sit there like the trained animal you are?" For a long moment, Taeho said nothing. He looked at Valina with an expression she could not read. Then, slowly, he set down his utensils. He placed his napkin on the table. He pushed back his chair and stood up. Valina's smile grew wider. Finally, she had broken him. Now he would shout or cry or beg, and everyone would see how weak humans truly were. But Taeho did none of those things. He straightened his jacket. He looked at Valina one more time, and when he spoke, his voice was soft and steady. "I wish you growth, princess." Then he turned away from her. He walked to where the emperor sat watching, bowed deeply and respectfully, and said, "Thank you for your hospitality, your majesty. Please excuse me." Without waiting for a response, Taeho walked toward the exit. His steps were unhurried. His back was straight. He did not look back at Valina or her friends or anyone else. The doors opened, and he walked through them, and then he was gone. The silence in the banquet hall was deafening. Valina stood frozen in place. Her mouth was open, but no words came out. She had prepared for anger. She had prepared for tears. She had prepared for begging. She had not prepared for this. He had just left. He had looked at her with those calm eyes, wished her growth as if she was a child who did not know better, and walked away. No argument. No defense. No emotion at all. He had treated her cruelty like it did not matter, like she did not matter. The young nobles behind her shifted nervously. They did not know what to do. This was not how these things were supposed to end. One of them laughed weakly. He ran away. The human ran away like a coward. But the laugh died quickly, because everyone in the room had seen Taeho's face as he left. There had been no fear in it, no shame, no defeat. If anything, he had looked peaceful. The emperor watched his daughter standing alone in the middle of the hall, surrounded by spilled wine and dying laughter. His ancient eyes showed nothing, but there was something like disappointment in the set of his mouth. "The banquet is finished," he announced. "Everyone may leave." The guests began to file out, whispering to each other. Valina still had not moved. She stood there, staring at the doors through which the human had disappeared. Her hands were shaking, though she did not know why. She had won. She had driven him away in front of everyone. She had proven that humans were weak and could not stand against Dorani's superiority. So why did it feel like she had lost? Why did his last words echo in her mind like a bell that would not stop ringing? "I wish you growth, princess." What did that even mean? She did not sleep that night. She lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling and played the moment over and over in her head. His calm eyes, his soft voice, his straight back as he walked away. He had not given her his anger because she was not worthy of his anger. He had not given her his pain because she could not hurt him. He had simply chosen to leave. And in leaving, he had taken all of her power with him. For the first time in her life, Princess Valina did not know what to do next. The morning after the banquet, Princess Valina called for her father. She stood in the throne room with fire in her eyes and demanded that the human called Taeho be punished. He had disrespected her in public. He had walked away from a princess of the Dorani Empire. He had made her look foolish in front of the entire court. The emperor listened to his daughter's complaints in silence. When she finished, he simply looked at her with his ancient, tired eyes. "What crime has he committed?" the emperor asked. "He insulted me!" Valina shouted. "How?" Valina opened her mouth, then closed it again. She thought back to the banquet. What had the human actually said? He had wished her growth. He had thanked her father for hospitality. He had bowed respectfully before leaving. He walked away from me," she finally said. "That is an insult to the royal family." "Is it?" The emperor leaned forward on his throne. "You poured wine at his feet. You called his species servants and animals. You mocked him in front of hundreds of guests. And what did he do? He thanked me and left peacefully." The emperor shook his head slowly. "If anyone was insulted last night, daughter, it was not you." Valina felt her face burn hot with shame and anger. "You are taking his side? A human side against your own blood?" "I am taking no sides. I am telling you what I saw." The emperor's voice was hard now. "I saw a young princess act like a spoiled child. And I saw a human show more dignity in one moment than you have shown in 100 years. Valina stepped back as if she had been slapped. "Leave me," the emperor said, "and think carefully about who truly embarrassed themselves last night." Valina fled the throne room with tears of rage burning in her eyes. She returned to her chambers and screamed at her servants and threw beautiful things against the walls until she was too tired to throw anything more. But the rage did not help, because deep down, in a place she did not want to look at, she knew her father was right. In the days that followed, word spread through the palace about what had happened at the banquet. The story changed depending on who told it. Some said the human had fled in terror, unable to face Dorani's superiority. These were mostly Valina's friends, trying to protect her reputation, but others told a different story. They spoke of how the human had stood up without fear, how his voice had been calm and steady, how he had bowed to the emperor with perfect respect before walking away. They spoke of the look in his eyes, the look that held no anger and no hurt, only something that might have been disappointment or pity. That word spread fastest of all. The human had pitied the princess. He had looked at her cruelty and found it not worthy of his anger, only his sadness. For a species that valued pride above all else, this was devastating. Ambassador Revan was one of the oldest members of the Dorani diplomatic service. He had served the Empire for 3 centuries and had dealt with hundreds of species across the galaxy. He had seen wars and treaties, victories and defeats. Very little surprised him anymore, but the human called Te-Ho surprised him. On the 4th day, Revan found Te-Ho sitting alone in one of the palace gardens. The human was watching a fountain that sprayed water in patterns shaped like flowers. His face was calm, as always. "May I join you?" Revan asked. Te-Ho nodded and moved to make room on the bench. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the fountain together. Finally, Revan broke the silence. "I have met many species," he said. "I have seen how they respond to insult and challenge. Some fight back with words. Some fight back with violence. Some collapse under the weight of mockery." He paused. "I have never seen anyone respond the way you did." Te-Ho smiled slightly. "Is that good or bad?" "I do not know yet, but it was remarkable." Revan turned to look at the human directly. "May I ask why? Why did you not defend yourself? You had every right to respond to her insults." Te-Ho was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "On my world," he said slowly, "we have learned something important. You cannot win an argument with someone who only wants to fight. If someone throws words at you hoping for pain, giving them pain only feeds their hunger. Giving them anger only proves their power. So you gave her nothing. I gave her the one thing she did not expect." Te-Ho looked at the old Dorani with clear eyes. "I gave her a choice. She could continue throwing stones at an empty space, or she could stop and wonder why the space was empty." Revan considered this. "And if she chooses to continue throwing stones, then she will tire eventually. Cruelty is exhausting when no one reacts to it, but kindness—" Te-Ho smiled again. "Kindness feeds itself. It grows stronger the more you use it. You were kind to her, after everything she said? I wished her growth. That is the kindest thing I could offer." Te-Ho turned back to the fountain. "She is young. Young people can change if someone gives them the chance. I did not want to be the one who closed that door forever." Revan sat in silence for a long time, thinking about these strange human ideas. Dignity that did not depend on status, strength that looked like walking away, kindness offered to enemies. "Your species is very strange," he finally said. Te-Ho laughed softly. "So we have been told." Meanwhile, in her private chambers, Velina was experiencing something she had never felt before. She could not stop thinking about the human. She played the banquet scene in her mind 1,000 times. She remembered every word she had said, every insult she had thrown, and she remembered his response. "I wish you growth, princess." At first, she had thought it was another kind of insult, a clever human way of saying she was small or stupid. But the more she thought about it, the less certain she became. He had spoken those words without anger, without sarcasm, without any of the venom she had poured on him. He had sounded almost hopeful, as if he genuinely believed she could become something better, as if he saw something in her that no one else had ever seen. The thought made her uncomfortable. She was a princess. She was perfect. She did not need to grow into anything. She was already everything she was supposed to be. But then why did his words keep echoing in her mind? Why did she keep seeing his calm eyes looking at her with that strange expression? Why did she keep wondering what it would feel like to have someone look at her with respect instead of fear? Late that night, Velina made a decision. She would find out everything she could about this human. She would discover his weaknesses, his secrets, the hidden fears behind that calm face. And then she would destroy him properly. This time, she would not fail. She did not realize, as she began her search, that looking closely at Kong Tae-ho would change everything she believed about the universe, and about herself. She sent her servants away and locked herself in the private archive of the Royal Library. The archive held information on every species the Dorani Empire had ever encountered. Somewhere in these endless files was everything she needed to know about humans. She started with the basics: physical characteristics, lifespan, homeworld. The information was clinical and cold, the kind of data collected by scouts and scientists. Humans were fragile. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore like paper. They could not survive in extreme heat or cold. They needed to sleep for hours every day. They grew sick from tiny organisms invisible to the eye. A single Dorani soldier could kill a dozen humans without effort. Valina smiled at this. See? They were weak. Her instincts had been correct. But as she read deeper, her smile began to fade. Humans were fragile, yes, but they were also persistent. They had evolved on a world that seemed designed to kill them. Predators with sharp teeth, weather that changed without warning. Diseases that swept through populations like fire. And yet humans had survived. They had more than survived. They had conquered their world and then reached for the stars. She found records of human history, translated by Dorani scholars. The stories were brutal. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They had killed millions of their own kind in wars over land, resources, and ideas. They had created weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Valina expected to feel satisfaction at this proof of human barbarism. Instead, she felt something else, something uncomfortable. Because the records also showed what happened next. Humans had stood at the edge of complete destruction. They had held weapons that could end all life on Earth. They had every reason to use them: fear, hatred, revenge. All the emotions that drove species to extinction. And they had chosen not to. They had looked into the darkness and turned away. They had put down their weapons. They had built treaties and alliances and slowly, painfully, learned to live together, not perfectly, not without conflict, but they had chosen survival over destruction, cooperation over conquest. The Dorani had never faced such a choice. They had always been powerful. They had always been united under the Empire. They had never stood at the edge of their own extinction and chosen to step back. Valina did not know what to do with this information. She turned her research to Tae-ho himself. There was a file on him in the diplomatic database. She opened it and began to read. Kong Tae-ho, born in a small city called Busan. Family status, common, parents deceased when he was young. No noble blood, no inherited wealth, no special advantages of any kind. He had grown up poor. He had worked difficult jobs while attending school. He had studied languages and cultures because he believed understanding others was the path to peace. He had faced discrimination for his background, his appearance, his lack of connections, and he had succeeded anyway, not through force or manipulation or cruelty, through patience, through study, through treating every person he met with respect, whether they deserved it or not. The file contained evaluations from his teachers and supervisors. They all said the same things: calm under pressure, never loses his temper, treats everyone with dignity, believes the best in people until proven wrong. One evaluation stood out. It was from a senior diplomat who had worked with Tae-ho during a difficult mission to a hostile world. Tae-ho has something rare, the evaluation said. He carries his worth inside himself. He does not need others to confirm it. He does not need praise or fear or respect from outside sources. He knows who he is, and that knowledge cannot be taken from him by insults or threats. Valina read this passage several times. She did not fully understand it, but something about the words made her chest feel tight. She had always needed others to confirm her worth. She was a princess because others bowed to her. She was powerful because others feared her. She was important because others treated her as important. What would she be if no one bowed? If no one feared? If no one treated her as special? The question terrified her. She continued her research. She found recordings of other diplomatic encounters involving humans. In each one, she saw the same pattern. Humans were insulted, threatened, dismissed. And in each one, humans responded with patience and calm. One recording showed a human diplomat facing a species that had killed human prisoners. Everyone expected war. Instead, the human asked to understand why. He listened to their reasons. He acknowledged their grievances. And slowly, carefully, he built a bridge between enemies. Another recording showed a human scientist working with a species that considered humans beneath notice. The aliens refused to speak directly to her. They addressed all their comments to her translator as if she was not in the room. She responded by simply doing excellent work. Month after month, year after year, until the aliens could no longer deny her skill. Eventually, they apologized. She accepted their apology without anger. In every case, humans won not by fighting, but by refusing to fight. They won by being undeniably, persistently good at what they did. They won by treating cruelty as a problem to be solved, rather than a battle to be won. Valina discovered a human concept that had no direct translation in Dorani. The closest meaning was something like character or inner worth. Humans believed that every person carried value inside themselves, regardless of birth or status or power. This value could not be given or taken by others. It could only be built through choices and actions. The poorest human could have more of this inner worth than the richest king, if the poor person chose kindness and the king chose cruelty. This idea went against everything Valina had been taught. In Dorani society, worth came from blood and power. Royals were valuable because they were royal. Common people were worth less because they were common. This was simply the way of things. But humans believed differently. Humans believed you earned your worth through how you treated others. Late into the night, Valina found herself looking at a picture of Tai Ho from his personnel file. An ordinary face, plain features, nothing special to see. And yet, he had stood in front of her, a princess with the power to destroy his career and possibly his life, and he had felt no need to defend himself, because his worth did not depend on her opinion. It depended only on his own choices. She finally understood what he had meant at the banquet. "I wish you growth, princess." He was not insulting her. He was not pitying her. He was offering her a gift. He was telling her that she could be more than what she was, that the cruelty she wore like armor was not her true self, that somewhere inside her was a person worth respecting, if only she chose to let that person out. Valina closed the files and sat alone in the dark archive. For the first time in her life, she asked herself a question that had never occurred to her before. What have I ever done to deserve respect? She had been born royal. She had been given everything, servants and teachers and beautiful things and endless power. But what had she done with any of it? She had hurt people. She had mocked them and humiliated them and made them small so she could feel big. She had never built anything, never helped anyone, never made a single choice that made the universe better instead of worse. When she died in 1,000 years, what would anyone say about her? What would she leave behind except memories of cruelty? The questions felt like knives in her chest. She did not have answers, but for the first time, she wanted to find them. The Dorani Council made their final demand. They wanted complete control of the human trade routes. No shared management, no partnership. Just surrender the routes or leave with nothing. The human delegation refused. Yun Su-jin stood before the council with steel in her voice. "We came here seeking fair partnership. What you offer is not partnership. It is theft dressed in diplomatic language. Earth cannot accept these terms. The council members showed no surprise. They had never expected humans to agree. This entire negotiation had been a performance, a way to show the galaxy that they had tried before taking what they wanted by force. Then we have nothing more to discuss, the head counselor said coldly. You may leave Dorani Prime within 2 days. Do not return. Su-Jin bowed formally. Thank you for your time. She gathered the human delegation and led them out of the council chamber. As they walked through the palace corridors, she found Tae-ho waiting for them. I heard, he said quietly. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Su-Jin's face was tired but determined. We knew this might happen. At least we tried. What happens now? We go home. We prepare for whatever comes next. She looked at him with concern. Are you all right? After everything that happened? I am fine. Tae-ho smiled gently. I think I will take a walk in the gardens before we leave. Clear my head. Su-Jin nodded. Do not stay out too late. We pack tonight and leave at first light. Tae-ho walked through the palace toward the western gardens. These were the quietest gardens, far from the main buildings, surrounded by trees that sang softly in the wind. He had found peace here during the difficult days of negotiation. He did not expect to find anyone else there. Princess Valina was sitting on a stone bench near a pool of still water. She was alone, without her usual crowd of nobles and servants. She looked smaller somehow, less sharp. Her silver skin seemed paler than before. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. Their eyes met. Tae-ho considered turning around and leaving. He did not want another confrontation. But something in her expression made him pause. She did not look angry or cruel. She looked lost. Ambassador Tae-ho, she said. Her voice was quiet, without its usual edge. I did not expect to see you here. I could say the same, Princess. He stood at a respectful distance, watching her carefully. Should I leave? No. The word came quickly, almost desperately. Then she seemed to catch herself. I mean, you do not have to leave, if you do not want to. This was strange. This was not the Valina he had faced at the banquet. Something had changed. Against his better judgment, Tae-ho walked closer and sat on a bench across from her. The pool of water lay between them, reflecting the darkening sky. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The trees sang their soft songs. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called out. Finally, Valina broke the silence. Why did you walk away? Tae-ho did not pretend to misunderstand. Because staying would have served no purpose. Were you not angry, after everything I said? He thought carefully before answering. I was disappointed. Disappointed? She repeated the word as if tasting something strange. Not angry, not hurt. Disappointed. Yes. In me? In the situation. He looked at her with those calm eyes she remembered from the banquet. You have power, Princess. You have influence and position and the ability to do great things. And you choose to use that power to hurt people who cannot fight back. That is disappointing. Valina felt the words land like gentle blows. They hurt more than any insult she had ever received. But not surprising, she said bitterly. You expected nothing better from me? That is not true. Tae-ho leaned forward slightly. I wished you growth. I do not make that wish for people I have given up on. Why not? Everyone else has. My father looks at me with disappointment. The court whispers about my cruelty behind my back. Even my friends only follow me because they fear what happens if they do not. Her voice cracked slightly. You should have given up on me too. Perhaps. Tae-ho smiled slightly. But I have met people like you before. People who wear cruelty like armor because they are afraid of what lies underneath. People who push others away because they are terrified of being truly seen. Valina felt tears burning in her eyes. She blinked them back angrily. You know nothing about me. I know you are here alone in the gardens instead of celebrating with the council. I know you came to find me after spending days thinking about our encounter. I know you asked me why I walked away, which means you have been asking yourself the same question. He paused. And I know that the person who asked that question is not the same person who poured wine at my feet. The tears won. They spilled down Valina's silver cheeks, leaving trails like liquid starlight. I looked you up, she whispered. I read your file. I read about humans, about your history, about how you nearly destroyed yourselves and chose not to. Many species have done the same. No, not the same. She looked at him through her tears. Other species survive because they become strong enough to destroy their enemies. Humans survived because you became strong enough to forgive them. Tejo said nothing. He simply waited. What do humans value most? Valina asked. More than power or wealth or status? What matters most to your people? He considered the question seriously. The person you become when no one is watching. I do not understand. Anyone can be kind when others are looking. Anyone can be good when there is reward for goodness. But who are you when no one will ever know? What choices do you make when no one can see? He looked at her with something like compassion. That is who you really are. Not your title. Not your power. Not what others think of you. Just your choices, made in the dark, known only to yourself. Valina thought about all the choices she had made when she thought no one important was watching. The servants she had belittled, the weak she had mocked, the pain she had caused for her own amusement. I do not like who I am when no one is watching, she admitted quietly. Then change. Is it that simple? No. Tejo shook his head. It is the hardest thing in the universe, but it is also the most important. The night had grown dark around them. Stars appeared in the alien sky, different constellations than the ones Tejo knew from home, but beautiful all the same. The negotiations failed, Valina said. You will leave tomorrow. We will probably never see each other again. Probably not. Then why are you being kind to me, after everything I did? Tejo stood up slowly. He looked down at her with eyes that held no anger, no resentment, nothing but quiet hope. Because kindness is not a reward for good behavior, Princess. It is a gift we give freely, hoping it will plant seeds that grow into something beautiful. He bowed to her, the same respectful bow he had given her father. I hope those seeds find good soil. He turned and began to walk away. Thank you, Valina called after him. For walking away, for not giving me what I deserved. Tejo paused but did not turn around. You deserved better than the person you were being, he said softly. I hope you find her. Then he walked into the darkness, leaving Valina alone with the singing trees and the silent stars and a heart that was finally beginning to change. It was early morning, and the twin sons of Dorani Prime had not yet risen. Servants moved through the guest quarters, helping pack containers and preparing the transport to the landing field. Yoon Soo-jin stood by the window, watching the dark sky begin to lighten. She had not slept well. None of them had. After weeks of difficult negotiations, they were returning home with nothing. No treaty, no alliance, nothing but memories of cold smiles and colder demands. Tejo joined her at the window. Ready? She asked without looking at him. Almost. He paused. I am sorry I could not do more. You did everything possible. We all did. Soo-jin finally turned to face him. The Dorani were never interested in fair partnership. They wanted submission, and when we refused to submit, they had no use for us. Perhaps someday things will change. Perhaps. But her voice held no hope. The transport was loaded and ready. The human delegation began walking toward the landing field. The palace corridors were empty at this early hour, silent except for the echo of their footsteps. They were halfway to the exit when a voice rang out behind them. "Wait!" Everyone stopped. They turned to see Princess Valina running toward them, her silver robes flowing behind her. She was alone, without guards or servants, or her usual crowd of nobles. Sujin's expression hardened. "Princess, have you come to deliver one more insult before we leave?" "No." Valina stopped in front of them, breathing hard. Her eyes found Tae-ho in the group. "I came to ask you to stay." "Stay?" Sujin shook her head. "The council made their decision. The negotiations are over." "They do not have to be." Valina's voice was urgent. "The council is meeting right now for final confirmation. If someone speaks against the decision, the emperor has the power to override them." "And who would speak against it?" "I would." Silence fell over the corridor. The human diplomats exchanged confused glances. This was the same princess who had humiliated them publicly, the same princess who had called them servants and insects, and worse. "Why?" Sujin asked suspiciously. "Why would you help us?" Valina looked at Tae-ho. "Because someone taught me that kindness is not a reward for good behavior. It is a gift we give freely, hoping it plants seeds." She took a deep breath. "I want to see what those seeds can grow into." Sujin was not convinced. This could be a trick. Another way to humiliate us. It could be. Tae-ho stepped forward before Sujin could object further. "But what do we lose by finding out? We are leaving with nothing anyway." After a long moment, Sujin nodded reluctantly. "Very well. Show us to the council chamber." They followed Valina through the palace at a rapid pace. The halls were coming alive now as servants and officials began their morning routines. They stared at the strange sight of the human delegation being led by the princess herself. The council chamber was full when they arrived. The emperor sat on his elevated throne, looking tired and old. Below him, the council members were arranged in a semicircle, their silver faces showing impatience. "What is the meaning of this?" the head counselor demanded as Valina entered with the humans behind her. "This session is closed to outsiders." "I am not an outsider." Valina walked to the center of the chamber with steady steps. "I am Princess Valina of the Dorani Empire, and I request permission to address the council." The emperor leaned forward with interest. "You have something to say about the negotiations, daughter?" "I do." "Then speak." Valina turned to face the council. Her heart was pounding, but she did not let her fear show. She thought of Tae-ho standing calmly while she poured wine at his feet. If he could face cruelty with dignity, she could face her own people with truth. "I stand before you to speak against the council's decision," she began, "and to apologize for my own actions during these negotiations." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The council members exchanged shocked glances. "At the welcome banquet, I publicly insulted the human delegation. I called them servants and animals. I mocked their species and their civilization." Valina's voice did not waver. "I did this because I believed it was my right. Because I believed that our power made us superior and their weakness made them worthless." She turned to face the human delegation directly. "I was wrong." The chamber went completely silent. When I attacked the human ambassador with my cruelest words, he did not fight back. He did not beg or cry or run away in shame. He simply stood up, wished me growth, and walked away. Valina paused, remembering that moment. He did not give me his anger, because I was not worthy of his anger. He did not give me his pain, because my words could not hurt someone who carries their worth inside themselves. She turned back to the council. I spent days trying to understand how a member of a weak species could show such strength. I studied human history. I learned about their struggles, their near destruction, their choice to survive through cooperation rather than conquest. Her voice grew stronger, and I realized that we have been measuring superiority by the wrong standards. Princess, the head counselor interrupted coldly, this is inappropriate. Personal reflections have no place in council deliberations. Then let me speak of practical matters. Valina's eyes flashed. We demand that humans surrender their trade routes because we are stronger. We believe strength gives us the right to take what we want. But what happens when we meet a species stronger than us? By our own logic, they would have the right to take everything from the Dorani. The council shifted uncomfortably. Humans have something we do not, Valina continued. They have proven that they can choose peace even when war would be easier. They have proven that they can forgive enemies and build alliances where others would build only graves. These are not weaknesses. These are strengths that cannot be taken by force. She looked at her father. If we treat humans as servants today, we make enemies of a species that could be our greatest allies. But if we treat them as partners, we gain something more valuable than any trade route. We gain friends who will stand beside us when greater threats come. The Emperor studied his daughter with new eyes. This was not the spoiled child who had come to him demanding punishment for the human. This was someone else. Someone better. The council's decision must stand, the head counselor insisted. We cannot show weakness to inferior species. Is it weakness to show respect? Valina challenged. Is it weakness to admit that others have value? She shook her head. The humans showed me more nobility in one moment of silence than I have shown in my entire life. If that is weakness, then perhaps we need to learn how to be weak. She turned to the human delegation one last time, to Su Jin, to the diplomats who had endured so much, and finally, to Tai Ho. I cannot undo what I did, she said quietly. I cannot take back my words or erase the hurt I caused. But I can choose differently today. I can choose to be better tomorrow. She bowed her head. I am sorry, not because I was caught or punished, but because I was wrong. I hope someday I can earn the right to be forgiven. The silence that followed was profound. Then the Emperor stood from his throne. The Council's decision is overruled, he announced. We will resume negotiations with fair terms, equal partnership, shared benefits. He looked at his daughter with something that might have been pride. And we will remember that true strength is shown not in how we treat those weaker than us, but in how we choose to be when power gives us the freedom to be cruel. The council members began to protest, but the Emperor silenced them with a raised hand. The matter is decided. Prepare new treaty documents. He turned to the human delegation. Please, stay. Let us begin again. Su Jin looked at her colleagues. They nodded slowly. We accept, she said. As the chamber erupted in activity, Valina walked to where Tai Ho stood. She did not ask for praise or thanks. She knew she had not earned them yet. I meant what I said, she told him quietly. About wanting to see what the seeds can grow into. Tai Ho smiled gently. I know. How do you know? Because you did not ask for anything in return. You just did what was right because it was right. He nodded respectfully. That is who you are when no one is watching, Princess. That is who you really are. Valina felt something warm bloom in her chest. Not pride exactly. Something better. Hope. The treaty between Earth and the Dorani Empire became one of the most successful alliances in galactic history. Trade flourished. Technology was shared. Cultural exchanges brought humans and Dorani closer together than anyone had imagined possible. Other species watched in amazement. The proud Dorani, who had conquered worlds and humiliated civilizations, were working as equal partners with a species that had barely left their home system. How had this happened? What had changed? The answer, when it spread through the galaxy, was hard to believe. A princess had apologized to a human, and a human had walked away from an insult. These small moments, it turned out, had changed everything. On a space station orbiting a neutral world, a joint academy had been established. Human and Dorani students studied together, learning from each other, building friendships that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. Princess Valina walked through the academy corridors, no longer dressed in royal robes, but in the simple uniform of a cultural liaison. She had given up most of her titles and privileges. She had chosen to work here, at the bridge between two worlds, helping young people avoid the mistakes she had once made. "Ambassador Valina!" A young Dorani student ran up to her, eyes bright with curiosity. "Is it true that you once insulted a human in public?" Valina smiled at the question. She had answered it many times before. "Yes, it is true," she said. "I was young and foolish and very wrong. But humans are so small, and their lives are so short. Were you not just saying what everyone thought?" "I was saying what everyone thought," Valina agreed. "And that is exactly why I was wrong. When everyone thinks something cruel, it does not make the cruelty true. It only means that everyone has failed to think clearly." The student frowned, processing this idea. "The human I insulted," Valina continued, "had more dignity in his smallest action than I had in my entire existence up to that point. His body was smaller than mine, his lifespan was shorter than mine. But his character was greater than anything I had ever encountered." She put a gentle hand on the student's shoulder. "We measure worth by the wrong things, size and power and years lived. These matter less than who you choose to be." The student nodded slowly and hurried off to class. Valina continued to her office. On her desk sat a small framed piece of paper, worn soft with age. It was a handwritten note from Kang Tae-ho, sent to her shortly after the treaty was signed. "The loudest voice rarely speaks the truest words. I am proud of the voice you found. May it grow stronger with each passing year." She read those words every morning. They reminded her of who she wanted to be. Far away on Earth, Tae-ho had returned to his homeland. He now taught at a small academy that trained new diplomats for service across the galaxy. His students came from many backgrounds, many countries, many circumstances. Some were wealthy and privileged. Some were poor and struggling. Tae-ho treated them all the same. "The most important lesson I can teach you," he told them on their first day, "is that you cannot control how others treat you. You can only control how you respond." A student raised her hand. "But sir, what if someone insults you publicly? What if they humiliate you in front of everyone?" Tae-ho smiled. He had been asked this question many times. "Then you have a choice," he said. "You can give them your anger, which is what they want. You can give them your pain, which feeds their cruelty. Or you can give them nothing at all and walk away. Is that not cowardice? Does it take courage to start a fight?" Tae-ho shook his head. "Any fool can throw punches. But it takes tremendous strength to refuse to fight when your blood is boiling and your pride is wounded. Walking away is not running away. Walking away is choosing peace when war would be easier." The student considered this. "What happened when you walked away from the Dorani princess?" She was left alone with her own cruelty. Without a target for her anger, she had nothing to do but look at herself. Tae-ho's voice softened with memory. "And when she looked closely enough, she found someone better hiding underneath. Someone who had been waiting to come out. Do you think everyone has that better person inside?" "I do. Some people bury it so deep that it takes years to find. Some people never find it at all. But the possibility is always there." He looked at his students with earnest eyes. "That is why we offer kindness even to those who hurt us. Not because they deserve it, because the kindness might be the key that unlocks the person they could become. On the joint space station, the day's lessons were ending. Human and Dorani students gathered in the common area, sharing food and stories and laughter. The easy friendship between them would have seemed like fantasy just a few years earlier. A young Dorani named Kira sat with a group of human students, asking questions about Earth. "Why do humans not fight back against insults?" she asked. "Other species respond to mockery with anger or violence, but humans just let it go. Why?" A human student named Park Yuna smiled at the question. "Because we learned something important a long time ago," she said. "Anger is a fire that burns the person holding it more than the person it is aimed at. When someone insults you, they are offering you poison. You do not have to drink it. But does it not make you look weak? Maybe to those who measure strength by loudness, but the people worth impressing are not fooled." Yuna leaned forward. "True strength is staying calm when everyone expects you to explode. True strength is offering a hand to someone who just slapped you. True strength is believing that enemies can become friends if you give them the chance." Kira thought about this. "Like Princess Valina and Ambassador Tai-Ho?" "Exactly like them." Yuna smiled. She was his enemy. She humiliated him in front of hundreds of people, and he responded by believing she could be better. Now look at them, partners in building peace. Friends across the stars. It seems too simple. The best ideas usually are. That does not make them easy. Yuna looked around at the diverse group of students, human and Dorani, learning side by side. Every person in this room is proof that the simple ideas work. We are here because two people chose kindness over conflict. We are here because one human walked away and one princess found the courage to change. On Dorani Prime, the Emperor held a ceremony to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the treaty. Representatives from a dozen species attended. The galaxy watched. Princess Valina was asked to speak. She stood before the assembled dignitaries, no longer the arrogant child she had once been. Her voice was steady and warm. 5 years ago, I met a human who taught me the most important lesson of my life. He did not teach me with words or lectures or punishment. He taught me by example. When I attacked him with cruelty, he responded with dignity. When I demanded his anger, he offered me hope." She paused, looking out at the audience. "I have spent these 5 years trying to live up to that example, trying to be the person he believed I could become. I do not always succeed. Change is difficult and old habits die hard. But every day, I wake up and ask myself, what kind of person will I be when no one is watching?" She smiled, her eyes finding the small group of human diplomats in the audience. "My friend Tai-Ho once told me that kindness is not a reward for good behavior. It is a gift we give freely, hoping it plants seeds that grow into something beautiful. Today, I look around this room and see those seeds in full bloom. I see enemies who became friends. I see strangers who became family. I see a galaxy learning that the greatest victory is not conquering others, but helping them become the best versions of themselves." She raised her glass. "To the man who walked away, to the seeds he planted, and to all of us who tend the garden." The room raised their glasses in response. Across the stars, in his small academy on Earth, Kang Tai-Ho watched the ceremony on a screen. He smiled quietly, his eyes filled with pride. Not pride in himself, pride in her, pride in them all. The lesson had been learned, the seeds had grown, and the galaxy was better for it. He turned off the screen and returned to his students. There was more teaching to be done, more seeds to plant, more enemies waiting to become friends. And all of it began, as it always did, with a simple choice. Walk away from those who want to drag you down. Offer kindness to those who least deserve it. and never, ever stop believing that people can change. That was the human way, and slowly, one heart at a time, it was becoming the galaxy's way too.